These are the 9.2 notes. We're going to talk about 5-number summary and IQR. So first is just a couple definitions we need to understand. The minimum value is obviously the lowest number. And I'm going to skip down here to the maximum value, which is the highest number. And then we've already talked about the median. The median is the middle of the entire data. And then Q1 and Q3 are actually the middle of those halves. So Q1 is the middle of the lower half, and Q3 is the middle of the higher half. And then the interquartile range, we shorten that to IQR, is the difference between Q3 and Q1. So we'll be subtracting there, Q3 minus Q1. All right, example number 1, the numbers are already in order for us. They do have to be in order to be able to do this. So minimum is a 3, maximum is a 23. And then to find the median, you just need the same amount of numbers at the top and the bottom. So I kind of will mark them off one at a time until I get to this middle one. So here I have 4 numbers above and 4 numbers below, and I end up with a 7 and the 8 in the middle. So my median would be 7 plus 8 divided by 2, 7.5. Then for Q1 and Q3, I'm actually going to, since 7 and 8 was not the median, the middle of it was, I'm going to split it right there, and I'm going to find the middle of this bottom half. So that's going to be the 5. And then the middle of the top half would be the 10. I'll get the IQR by doing 10 minus 5, Q3 minus Q1, which gets us an answer of 5. All right. Example number 2 is not in order. So the first thing you need to do is put that in order. Always looking for the smallest number first. It's going to be 10. And as I do it, I just cross it off. I don't see anything in the 20s or the 30s or the 40s. The next number I see is a 50. And then I go to the 60s, which would be 65. Into the 70s. I see a 73, 78, 79, 83, 84, 85, 89, 92, 97, and finally 100. All right, so now let's work to find the minimum, the maximum, 10 and the 100. And then I always go to the median next. So I just kind of cross out numbers on each side equally, 2 numbers on each side, 3 numbers on each side, 4, 5, 6, which puts this as the median, 83. When you have a number that is the median, as opposed to having a number that's in between the 2 numbers, we actually don't want to include that middle number 83 in the bottom half or in the top half. So that just kind of gets left alone. And then we go to the middle of these, which ends up being the 65 and the 73, so right here in the middle there. So we would do 65 plus 73 and then divide that by 2. Gets us 69, and then same thing up here. That Q3 would be right there. 89 plus 92, divide that by 2, 90.5. And then the IQR, Q3 minus Q1, 21.5. So 90.5 minus 69. All right. Now on the back, we're going to talk about something called outliers. Outliers are values that lie outside the other values. So for example, in a classroom, you normally have a bunch of high school students and then there's a teacher. Usually the teacher is the outlier if you're talking about the age, right? Most of the students are going to be like 15, 16, 17, 18 years old, and the teacher's usually going to be quite a bit older than that, maybe in their late 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, etc. So that would be an example of something that is an outlier. In order to check that, so we know exactly whether something is an outlier or not, we use these two little formulas. That one checks for the low end outlier, meaning if once you find this boundary number, if you have numbers smaller than that, it's an outlier. High end Q3 plus 1.5 times IQR. This will check for the upper end. So once you find this number, anything larger than that would be an outlier. All right, example 3. We'll start by putting these in order. So I've got 3, followed by 10, and another 10, and then 11, and 12, 2 13s, a 15, and a 16. All right, minimum 3, maximum 16, median. Again, checking each one of these off. Median looks like it's 12. And then you want the middle of the bottom half and the middle of the top half. So the middle of the bottom half would be right there. Right between 10 and 10 is going to have to be 10. Right up here between 13 and 15 would have to be 14. All right, IQR 14 minus 10 would give us 4. All right, let's check for these outliers now. We're going to use our formula. We're going to check for the low end and then the high end. So we'll do Q1 minus 1.5 times IQR. Then we're just going to put the numbers in since we figured them all out up here anyway. And you just type that into your calculator as exactly as you see it, parentheses and all. If you're going to do this on a smaller calculator, maybe your phone calculator, will want to make sure you multiply first. Multiply the 1.5 times the 4, and then do 10 minus that answer. All right, the high end, Q3. Plug those numbers in. Type that into the calculator, we get an answer of 20. So the low end, if there are any numbers smaller than 4, it's an outlier. If there are any numbers larger than 20, that's an outlier. So you can see as you look at back up our list up here, we do have a number smaller than 4. It's 3. So 3 is an outlier. We don't have any numbers larger than 20, so we don't have any high-end outliers. Just the 3 is the only outlier. And you can kind of tell from that data, 3, it looks like it's kind of off. It's kind of like significantly smaller than the rest of the numbers, which all look pretty close together. All right, last example, number 4. Again, start by putting these numbers in order. 4, 11, oops. All right, there we go. Minimum of 4, maximum of 45, median, right here in the middle of those two, between 15 and 16 would be 15.5. And then you want the middle of the bottom half, including the 15. And then the middle of the top half, including the 16. That would fall right here, 12. That would fall right there, 20. And Q3 minus Q1 would give us 8. All right, and then it asks the question, is 4 an outlier? In order for us to find whether 4 is an outlier, 4 is towards the smaller end of the numbers, so we would want to check the low end boundary, which again would be Q1 minus 1.5 times IQR. It's going to get us an answer of 0. So is 4 smaller than 0? Anything smaller than 0 would be an outlier. So 4 is not smaller than 0. 4 is within the range. So is 4 an outlier? No, it's not. It would have to be smaller than 0. All right, is 45 an outlier? 45 would obviously be one of the higher numbers. Oops, that's a plus. My apologies. 32. So anything higher than 32 would be an outlier. So 45 is larger than 32. So you would say yes, 45 is an outlier. Maybe you say no, 4 is not. So you almost want to think about this 0 to 32 as a range. Anything between 0 to 32 counts as a data. Anything larger than that, smaller than that, is going to count as an outlier.